Finally, before I turn it over to Dr. Smith, I wanted to mention our state parks that I've asked Secretary Hurst to review what more restrictions we need. I was concerned about out-of-state visitors that are coming here, also about the crowds that are not following social distancing requirements and guidelines that we have. Her recommendation was that we move only to day trip only use of our state parks where there's not overnight use of the facilities. Secondly, to restrict some of the parking that will limit some of the access. And thirdly, to give our park rangers the ability to enforce the guidelines to a greater extent. She'll go into this in a little bit more detail. I also wanted to say that in reference to the Buffalo River National Park, the scenic national park that we all value so much in Arkansas, that I talked to both local officials. We've heard word from our state legislators that are there, but also I talked to the park superintendent last night late, and the conclusion I reached is that I will be recommending to the Secretary of the Interior that the Buffalo River Scenic National Park be closed through this emergency, at least for a time until we can get a handle on it, until we feel like it's safe to reopen that. That's a decision that we've made by the Secretary of Interior, but it has my recommendation that I have made to him for that closure. And I advised the superintendent of the parks of that point as well. To illustrate it, yesterday, which was not spring break, that was just a regular day on early in the week, there were 60% of the visitors were from out of state. Now you think about that in terms of hot spots across the country, the fact that other parks have closed certainly points to the need that if we're going to try to limit out-of-state visitors and the spread of COVID-19, that we needed to take this step, and I made that recommendation.
The recommendation that we made to the governor last night was based on three things. First of all, actual visitation data that we have collected through our online reservation system at state parks. Secondly, observations on day use from our park staff and from the public. And finally, best practices from other states. It is our desire to keep state parks open, but only where it is safe and manageable to do so. On this Friday morning, April 3rd, we will move to day use only across our state park system, eliminating all overnight opportunities. This is consistent with 28 other states, and we believe it will further reduce the number of out-of-state visitors that are coming to Arkansas. We're adding additional measures on top of this day-use-only scenario to further limit crowding and reduce risk. For example, the parking situation at state parks can sometimes get so crowded in the parking lots that it overflows to the highways and streets surrounding the parks, and we are going to designate that only parking is allowed on site in approved lots. So at some state parks, they'll be able to close gates. Not all of them can do this, but some of them will be able to close gates to visitors when the parking lot is full. They'll also be able to issue citations if overflow parking goes out onto the highways and streets to get to the park. So our superintendents will be watching for that and managing that. We will also close some trails that are particularly problematic. Two examples that I can share with you today. Cedar Falls Trail at Petty Jean State Park will close, as well as the East and West Summit Trails at Pinnacle Mountain State Park. Our park rangers will travel throughout state parks and work to disperse gatherings. Superintendents and interpreters, our uniformed staff, will actively work to educate visitors on site. And finally, our park rangers that might be stationed at another park in another part of the state that is has less visitation will be deployed to parks that are more overcrowded so that we can better manage crowds. We'll move those staff resources across the system to where they are needed the most. Full information on all of these changes and full trail and site closings will be posted on the State Parks website and on our social media pages. We are continuing to work on that through the day, but we should have it up there by this afternoon. And if these measures aren't enough to address issues of overcrowding and inadequate social distancing, we'll pivot and make new recommendations. Very fluid situation, but we are staying on top of the data and the best practices across the country, and we will adjust as needed. Thank you. Thank you, Governor.